Hi, I'm Holly. I write and teach the Bible studies here at Study with Friends. My background in this is a combination of formal education and my own personal study of the Word. I infuse perspectives from different systematic theologies when I think that would be helpful in rounding out our understanding of the text. But for the record, my formal education is from a Reformed theological seminary. I strongly believe that we should all understand the background of anyone who's teaching us about the Bible. So if you'd like, you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. This is a group of real women doing Bible study and life together, and we're really glad you're here.
So then let's go ahead and move into the three elements, which Carol already teased out. The three elements in every covenant are land, descendants, or sometimes it's called seed, and a special relationship with Yahweh, God, the God of Israel. So land, we'll abbreviate it by saying land, descendants, and relationship. So when we say relationship, we're talking about this between Israel and her God, this vertical, thanks. Horizontal is the other way. So land, seed, and relationship. So this is where you guys are going to have to start saying some words. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to do before we get into Genesis and really see all the examples is set a framework for our personal application so that we can return back. That's a touchstone for us as we go into these sometimes, crazy examples of land, seed, and relationships. So I think, especially because it's the Old Testament, I don't know, I guess a lot of us find the New Testament easier to put into personal context. So I thought it would be appropriate for us to do this personal stuff first. And that way we have sort of a framework, like I said, a touchstone for what do these things really mean? And as you said, why did they matter so much between God and his people in the Old and New Testament? So I think that a great way to do that is to think about why would these things mean anything to us right now. So the first question in the homework that I asked you guys to think about was, what are your reflections, just on the surface of the word land or the biblical promised land? And really don't overthink it. Like, what do you think of when you think of promised land? Yes. Jump in.
All right. So for me, unfortunately, my first thought, so I didn't become a believer until I was an adult. So these ideas and concepts of promised land is just this outrageously outlandish concept. So it wasn't really a personal reflection for me. So it wasn't like I thought of, this beautiful area or this town. It seems like a theme park kind of thing. So which is probably a little maybe different than but that's what I think of when I think of the promised land. That's what I think of. I think of these crazy stories like Noah and being swallowed by a whale and being, all these kind of things. And so when I think of promised land, it's sort of that same thing for me.
Somehow out there.
Yeah, it's just an out there concept. It's not this really deep and which, of course, if I sit and I think about it, obviously it really very much is, because we're being promised land forever. But when I just sit and think of the idea of the promised land, it just seems weirdly hokey and out
disconnected
to me. Yeah, just really disconnected. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for being honest about that. How about you?
I guess I thought a couple of things, that it's this physical space on the planet, from this river to the ocean and from here to here, and it's this very specific land geography of it. And that when the Hebrews left Egypt, it took them 40 years to get there. It just that always has struck me as crazy. And even today, the land of Israel has been battled over more than any piece of earth ever, because it's special. God made that little piece of it's the size of New Jersey. It's this little piece of land, and yet it's so important. I also had the thought they had to fight for it, just from having taught Sunday school a lot of years. There were tons of people groups living there when Moses got them right to the edge, and they came over. They had to fight it out and battle to get it eventually. and that many never saw it. Moses never went to the promised land after all that because of sin and doubt and other things. So God was very specific, like who he would allow to move into it, as well as who he promised it to. So
Those are great
all
observations.
all those
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
things, I think.
We're all looking at you now.
My
I'm so
turn?
sorry.
Oh my
We all
gosh.
like swiveled our
I
heads.
mean-
That was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
fine. Shout out to my parents because they really made sure that I like knew biblical truths and stuff. Because in my head, I've always seen the Promised Land as Israel and the whole land surrounding it that they were going after in Exodus, like you mentioned, and the stress of being out in the wilderness for 40 years and getting there, but then getting sent in exile. And I guess it was kind of in the back of my head, but because, as is kind of like the plague of people raised Christian, often it kind of just becomes dull as you grow
Yes.
older, and it's just kind of there, and it doesn't have a weight because you're like used to that knowledge. But I guess like being in college, because if you're looking for like the symbolic, like personal application of stuff like this, I guess like being in college kind of taught me more about what it must have been like as someone just like wandering in the desert or trying to get out of exile to what was promised, because a lot of us as time went on would look at graduation as like the promised land, like oh my gosh,
that's a great
just
application.
get me there. And then of course, I mean, this year and perhaps this coming year, knock on wood, please no, it is like different, you know. It wasn't what we thought, but we still got it. But now me and a bunch of people that I know that graduated or are about to are kind of like, that's not it. Now like we have this whole other thing, and it probably, however real it was looking at it that way, it's even more real in my head now, because I'm like, well, it's not kind of laid out for me anymore. Like when you go to school, it's like you got elementary school laid out, then you have middle school, and then you have high school laid out.
Definite path.
Exactly. And when you're in college, you have the 4 years laid out ahead of you before that. But then after, even if you know the field that you're going into, there's like, I don't know what's going on. Like I could do grad school, I could get a job, I could get married, I could go here, I could go to one of 49 other states. I have no idea. And so I think I and a bunch of other people are kind of feeling really between a lot of stuff. We kind of feel like, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm in maybe like the 30th year of my exile in the wilderness right now. And I'm not really sure. I don't have, I don't have Google Maps. Like,
Okay, you definitely have to
Yeah.
come back for the exile part of this series, because it sounds like it's very personally. Yeah, I
I'm
get.
trying. I feel like I'm stretching it. So
No, I don't think you're stretching it at all. I think that you're spot on, Bella, because
Cool.
you may have jumped ahead a little.
Oh, dang, really?
That's okay, because because I think you're anticipating what we really do want to understand, which is, are we thinking about our promised land as something out there that happens to us, or that we have to get to?
Mhm.
Or are we understanding it in the context of, are we already there?
Yeah.
Promises that God has made and that we can rest in. And so we're going to, and maybe we'll unpack that in a way that helps you think differently about it. That would be
so.
great. Or, maybe you're
My
just
question
perfect
is
the way
more
that
of
you are.
like, why is it so nondescript, and should it be less nondescript? Which is
In the Old Testament or in your
no,
life?
there's a parallel. I think in my life it feels super nondescript. I feel like it probably shouldn't be. In the Bible, it probably shouldn't feel very nondescript either. So,
Well, I might have some thoughts about that.
okay. I can't read your mind.
Let's wait. I don't want to get there
So
too
you're saying
fast.
as a New Testament believer, I don't think we have the tie to a physical land like the Old Testament Jews did. Our land is heaven or salvation, or but like Jews today, I mean, the whole movement of Zionism is they are physically moving to Israel. They are still awaiting their Messiah, right? So that land is still a very physical place. As a New Testament believer, I think the land is not the physical country of Israel. It's all the
spiritual,
concept,
in
the
a spiritual
spiritual
context.
So
So we'll do that. We'll do that together. Let's take our time and chew on it a little. So one of the next questions is just sort of taking our pace here. If you, let's just say, I don't know if I asked this question well. What I was driving at was, what if someone, maybe I should have asked, what if someone just gave you a house? That would have been a better question. What I asked in the homework was, what if someone gave you a piece of land? And I'm not sure that is as impactful than if I said, what if someone gave you a house? That would feel significant. Especially if you were homeless, right? If you were a person with no home, and then someone just gave you a home, I think maybe that's more impactful to where I'm trying to make this more relatable. I don't know if we can even imagine. What I can apply it to is when we got our first house, which I'm in. You're sitting in right now because we're like for one and done. Even just like I remember getting our first apartment. That feeling of like I belong someplace. And definitely here, when we got this house, I belong someplace, which leads into really the next question, so we can sort of mash them up, which was just if we change the word land to home, and I just said house, but let's use the word home. How do you feel about the concept of home, and describe your feelings about home, the word home?
Yeah, I had answered about the land. I thought, you have that it's a lot of responsibility. It's like you have to take care of it. You have to mow it, or rake it, which is what I spent all the last week doing. You have to pay taxes. Like there's management to take care of land. I was thinking like farmland maybe more than just property generically. But when you add the concept of home to it, it puts a much more positive spin on it for me. Like that if you have a home, that's a safe place. It's somewhere to go. Especially during COVID, it's like we're all thankful we actually have a home to sequester in, that's that can keep us safer, and then you're hopefully have that concept of like you can just be yourself, you can be comfortable there, you can be in your pajamas all day, whatever.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other reflections about home.
So my personal reflection, and I actually didn't write this down, I sort of went a different way, but my personal reflection about my home, as you were sort of restating the question, my home, a piece of my home was gifted through my wedding. So we had a wedding gift that was large enough that we were able to help us put a down payment on the home. So it was through my parents. So part of that home, and for those of you who don't know me super well, I live 2 blocks away from my sister and her family, and I live 2 blocks away from my parents. So home and family are sort of all really intertwined really deeply. So part of this home that we live in and that we've grown a family in was gifted through my parents. And so even to think about that now and to think about like what a beautiful gift that was given at the time when we were young, and we, you're right, getting your first home, because we were in an apartment also, and how exciting to get our first home, and our family starts to build in this home. And so it does change the perspective of what a home here looks like, in our quote unquote temporary home that we're here. And just that connection to family, and then how that relates to God, right? Because our Father, really, the blessing all really came from our big Father, right? Like from God the Father, He was able to give us this, financial place where we could buy the home. And so even settling in our home every day just gives us a comfort, knowing that it was a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good framing. That's really good context. And I'm sure you guys know I'm leading us to try to, relate this to the Israelites. I'm wondering what your reflections are on home, having spent time away from home at college and then coming back. Do you have some perspective that you didn't have before you left?
Could probably teach a semester class on that. It's so much. I don't know. I guess like I was trying to think it over in my head because it's just so much. But it's like, And I like grew up really. I feel like you could probably feel the terrified opening up energy radiating out of me because I'm just so reserved, so homebody, like not just I'm in my head and so like going to college was like I had never gone. It was like to go to someone's house that wasn't a family member's for more than 2 nights was like a massive adventure. And it was like I quickly folded under the social pressure and I was in like one room and then I had my own the next year and then I had a house with 2 roommates, like a townhome for 2 years, and being such a homebody who hates change and like I just need to live, I lived in the same little house with my sweet little family for all the way up, and my 2 kids, my cats, for my whole life. That was always my safe spot. I felt like I lost a spot, a piece of home in my heart when my grandparents got rid of their house to move back, which my mom might have talked about before here, because we all felt the same way. And then in college it was like that. But the past 2 years, mostly this one, I've been really, God's really been challenging me with almost like an idea like we're talking about now. It's like, there's one of my favorite songs has this line that says, "I'm not home till heaven opens." And there's this idea of and the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. And after being really called into ministry, full time, I'm kind of I want a home, and I know I love my home, and I would go home every weekend for a while in my first 2 years of college, and I really deeply yearn for my own family, my own home one day. But at the same time, I'm really being challenged by I feel like I'm up and going in the middle of 2 things. I'm living at my old house, but I'm that's not where I'm supposed to be right now, I think, or soon. And my brain is kind of all over the place when you ask that question.
Of home.
It's I don't
so
even
this
know
is
what it is
really
anymore,
relevant to you right now.
Well, I guess,
to figure out how we define home and where we belong, and
It's
I
different for everybody,
feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that you're really in the middle of that right now.
Yeah, it's very
but which is total. By the way, which is
yeah.
totally normal for your age.
Well, yeah.
I think we all
I'm
went
not
through
the only
that.
one that
When
I
I
know.
graduated from college, I was in. Wait, was I engaged by then? Was I engaged by then? He's behind the camera. Yes, we were engaged by then.
I don't know.
So I guess I knew where I was going, but still you feel that disorientation of what is the future hold? There's something about your defined life before college.
Yeah,
that you kind of it's set for you. You said it earlier. There's a path, and you kind of just stay on it and do the thing. And after college, the path is less clear.
Yeah, it's I want to be cemented, but I don't know if God wants me to be cemented now or yet.
Well, I keep wanting. I'm just going to give the cheat sheet. He wants you to be cemented in Him.
Well, yeah.
That's the home. That's the promised land. That wherever you go, you take that with you. It's on the inside. Easier. I mean, I've just said that to you in a very trite way. It's very hard to accomplish that in spiritual peace. So don't think that just because I said it in a simple way, it's simple to do.
No.
But that's that's the idea.
Right, because what we do, right, is we even now, even talking about it here, and me sort of reminiscing on the comfort of my home, we forget that we're not supposed to be 100% comfortable here, even, right? So because this isn't our full
great
home.
point.
Yeah.
So but there is such a sense of comfort and peace. And I remember you're telling the story, and I remember moving into the new home and just thinking how can I sleep into this new home? Because you get used to the other home that you were in. And so there is something to be said about God does not necessarily want us to be completely comfortable.
Yeah, that's what
in this home.
That's what that lyric challenged me with. Because if I'm not home until heaven opens, i.e., I'm not home until I'm joined with the Lord, then. That's what I'm waiting for.
Who said it? This is a quote I've said so many times, and for whatever reason today it's escaping me. It'll come to me, but it's an old, a long time ago guy who said, "Our hearts are restless until they find rest in you."
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't think of it. I want to say, is it Augustine? But I think
Probably.
it's, I don't know if it's Augustine or if it's the other A guy whose name it's probably the other A guy whose name I
Aquinas?
can't think of.
Aquinas?
It might have been, yes, yes, that's the other A guy. Good job. Star for you. Thank you. My old brain needs help from your young brain. Okay. So actually, one of the things that you said, Kathy, about your parents is really great lead into the next question, because I was asking if you had thoughts about God's demonstrated love for His people and for us through the promise of land or home or a home. And I think we've skirted around that a little bit, but can you put a finer point on what you think I'm driving at in that question? Any of you? Jump in. You don't need my permission.
I just thought every time I think about the promised land, I think of that it's flowing with milk and honey. You know, that's the phrase is always said. And what does that mean? That there's your needs will be met there. There's food there for you. It's safe, or it will be. So that's like
So sufficiency.
yeah, provision. Yep.
Okay, so this is a good time to take a beat and make sure that we're clear that we're not preaching the prosperity gospel. Because what we're not saying is that if you believe hard enough in God, you're going to have financial blessings and physical manifestation of his love. It doesn't mean that a third world mom who's, living in a hut is any less a recipient of God's grace and salvation and all of his spiritual blessings than someone who lives in a first world country like the U.S., even in the most poverty-stricken areas of our first world country. It looks very different than a third world country. And I think it's Jen Hatmaker who really said something that I loved, which was, and if I'm quoting the wrong person, I'll try to fix that too, but she said, if it's not, when you think about biblical truth, if it's not true for a single mom in a third world country, it's not true. Because God's blessings aren't just for first world America. So we should be cautious about applying promised land to some prosperity gospel. So we reject that handedly.